ecological consciousness at the beginning of this new year. Hello, I'm Richard Thompson, pastor of Central Presbyterian Church, and your host for this edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. And as we're about to conclude this holiday season, we're also mindful of what an environmentally sensitive place this capital city of Texas is. For it's been here that a pioneering effort has been undertaken to recycle Christmas trees. This undertaking has been emulated by such metropolitan areas as Chicago, is written up in such national publications as the Christian Science Monitor, and has indeed been noted throughout the world. And within the religious community of this metropolitan area, there are those who are likewise evidencing concern about the planet's future. Among these is a pastor who has written up 10 Commandments of Ecology, which he will share with us today. She is the Reverend Lisa Coram Fox, pastor of the Presbyterian Poema community in Manor. We're also privileged to have Austin City Forester John Gudritis. We welcome you both to our discussion today.
Morning.
And we'd like to, first of all, John, I think being in the wake of the season, have you share with us a little bit about this Christmas tree recycling, what it is, and a bit of how it came about.
Well, we're in our 5th annual Christmas tree recycling this year in Austin and in Travis County now also. We have 14 sites located throughout the county where people can, once they take down their Christmas tree this year, they can bring them on into us, into these various sites, and they'll be assisted there by volunteers unloading, and they can even pick up a new Christmas tree if they like, a new little pine seedling that we'll be giving away. And those trees will be mulched up, and we'll use them in the parks for underneath, in the flower beds and along trails and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And you say this is in its 5th year?
Right. We started it back in 1985.
And how has it progressed? I mean, from small seeds have come great oaks?
Right. Well, the first year I was sort of trapped in Austin as a new city employee. I'm the city forester here in Austin, and I hadn't had my time in yet, so I couldn't take vacation. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of stuck here for Christmas, and I always had this idea, well, what happens to that Christmas tree that you leave out at the curbside? And so I asked some people, I said, well, what would happen if we just started having recycling at a few of our park sites? And they said, well, go ahead and try it. We tried it the first year. We got $5,000 trees from the citizens and 5,000 unsold trees from vendors. We had 10,000 trees.
Oh, I see.
And now, as of last year, we got about 30,000 trees, 24,000 citizen trees, and about 6,000 vendor trees.
So it really has grown rather rapidly in a relatively short period of time.
And not only in Austin, throughout the country, and now even in Europe. Across the United States, we have San Francisco, Chicago, as you mentioned, New York, Fort Lauderdale, and many, many smaller cities in between. And this year in Germany and England also have picked up on the idea from our humble beginnings in Austin and our recycling Christmas trees. And we really see it as something that really is not a top-down movement. It's really something that people, a groundswell of support. For instance, in our efforts here in Austin, we have over 400 volunteers that help us on these efforts.
I think that we have a bit of tape that perhaps picks up on some of this activity from preceding time, and this is in one of the parks that these are being received?
Right. What'll happen is this is kind of the week afterwards. From our 14 sites, we generally stuff them into roll-off containers, large containers that are donated by disposal companies. They're transported down to Zilker Park, and 15,000 used Christmas trees on the ground is a heck of a pile. Mm-hmm. And then we take these grinders, as we see here, and we grind them up into chips. And we use those chips throughout the year in our parks, and it helps us save on mulch, which conserves water, provides a little bit of fertilizer to the trees because of course, the pine trees are acid and our soils are basic, so it helps with the fertilizer also.
I see. Well, now, as we think about this, Lisa, and as a pastor in the area here, have you heard about this in your particular locality, and people have spoken of that?
Uh-huh.
And what's your feeling in terms of how this adds to the meaning of the Christmas season? I mean, is it a tangential thing, or is it somehow essential to what Christmas is about?
Yeah, I think any ways that we celebrate Christmas that take into account the huge gift God gives us in the earth adds holy meaning.
And it's not just a municipal activity from that standpoint.
No, any activity is holy if your center is right.
All right. I think that the theology of ecology is one thing that we'll have occasion to come back to and have you share some further thoughts on. And I think that the one thing that occurs to me about the Christmas season is that I suspect if you're working in your congregation to think about alternatives, how can you do the season differently than if you weren't part of the religious community? And that broadens it a little bit beyond the trees part of it, but what do you do with your people to help them think in terms of an alternative celebration?
I think less focus on things and commercialism and more on celebrating with people to people. The joy of just talking homemade things, decorating trees that are outside that are still going to be living after the season.
Kind of the simplicity idea of the Shakers comes to mind about just the gift to be simple.
Yeah.
And we are, I suspect, however, not going to be forsaking, by and large, within the society, the Christmas tree tradition. Are we doing something bad by having Christmas trees, natural trees, rather than artificial trees? I know this comes up.
Well, there's about 60 million Christmas trees that are grown and harvested. It's much like corn, is the way I look at it as a forester. These trees are generally planted on marginal land, land that would not support crops otherwise, and provide a local economy with some wherewithal. And so I think that living Christmas trees, or I guess living is ones that you can live afterwards. These are trees that are cut and harvested is a good thing. It used to be that the Christmas tree tradition where the family would go out and harvest the tree out of the woods. Now, if 60 million Americans went out into the woods and harvested Christmas trees, we might be running out of trees pretty soon. But they're specifically created for this market, and then they're renewed afterwards. So what's one of the nice things about trees, of course, is renewable. It does establish a tradition. While you can't go out and harvest the tree, the family can go out and purchase the tree, which I used to do with my family, and then everyone brings it into the house and decorates it as a family kind of thing. Uses it as a centerpiece to the holiday, into the experience of Christmas. And then now, instead of taking this lifeless object that's been so important to the family celebration and kind of defrocking it and tossing it, you can bring it on in. And in Austin, you can also get a teeny little Christmas tree that you can plant in your yard and kind of complete the cycle, and not only learn about the gifts that Christmas can bring, but also that the earth can provide through trees.
Now, well, this Christmas tree that you provide, people can pick up and they bring their old one.
Right.
Will that grow in Austin, in most yards?
Everybody asks that, because so many people have tried to dig up trees out in Bastrop or out in East Texas and bring them into Austin, and then they grow for a couple years, they look yellow, and then they die. Well, the kind of trees that we have are Afghan pines or Mondel pines, and they're from the Caucasus Mountains in Afghanistan and Turkey. They do very well in dry limestone, which of course is what we have in Austin.
Oh, I see.
And so they grow rather quickly, and they're little teeny guys, and we get about 10,000 every year. We'll have 10,000 to give away this season, and if you don't get one, you can call my office, or and we'll try and make sure that you get one.
Now, is this part of the relief, the global relief program that I've read about, the trying to throughout the planet to have more trees, and in Austin there's a particular expression of that. Does this fit into that?
Well, about a year ago, the American Forestry Association started a project called Global Relief, and it's really tied in with the whole global warming that, for instance, America has about 25%, uses about 25% of the world's energy, and I forget what percentage of population we are, 5 or 6%.
Yeah.
So we're using a disproportionate amount of energy, and energy, when we turn on the lights or the TV or the air conditioner, we burn fuel to make that electricity, and that fuel produces carbon dioxide. It gets trapped in our atmosphere, the sun's rays come in, and they can't get out, and it warms the planet up. So their thought was, if we could plant 100 million trees in America in the next 3 years in cities where they could shade buildings and shade things like that, streets and shopping malls, that less energy would be used to cool, and that would mean less energy and less carbon dioxide being produced in our electrical plants.
And what's the goal for Austin in terms
Austin,
of...
Our goal is ambitious also. It's 1 million trees by the year 2000. And we've been lucky to have real good leadership with George Humphrey and the rest of the City Council.
All right. Well, that's helpful to note as we move into a new year. And I think that the going into the new year is also going for Austinites to have this question, is treaty oak going to make it? Mm-hmm. And we have some tape on that from this past year, and perhaps you can give us some interpretation since you've been directly involved with that.
Well, back in June, the treaty oak was maliciously poisoned by a vandal who is now pending trial. Some sort of wayward act or ritual that was committed. The tree is several hundred years old, as it's stated on the monument in front of the park. It was purchased in the 30s during the Depression by the City of Austin with donations to save the tree from destruction. Since it's been poisoned, we've had Mr. H. Ross Perot has financed all our efforts, including setting these poles around the tree to put up shade screens around the tree to try and lower the temperature on the tree and reduce the stress. And here they are boring holes about 10 feet into the ground. We had about 3 feet of good soil, and then from 3 to 10 feet was just solid sand. It was a perfect, if you were going to have a potted plant that was 600 years old and 50 foot tall, you would plant it on this site. Oh. It's a beautiful, beautiful site for a tree. So the citizens of Austin preserved this tree as part of their heritage and part of their culture. Maliciously vandalized. We've spent over $120,000 to date to try and save this tree. And we really won't know its condition or if it will survive until this March or April when the new leaves come out on the live oaks. So we're waiting until the spring to really be sure. But we're pretty sure that the tree will survive. Now, what condition it comes out in, that's the big question.
Right. I don't know, Lisa, did you ever have opportunity to preach about treaty oak at the time this was all going on in regard to the way in which it lifts up the stewardship of the earth theme and the threat to the earth?
No, I didn't. Did you?
Well, I did. I just, at the time it was going on, I just felt that this comes to represent the planet, in a sense. I mean, what's happening locally could be seen globally from that perspective. Mm-hmm. And I think that the extent to which the church has taken trees, I mean, within the biblical setting, trees are religious in meaning. Mm-hmm.
Terebinths of righteousness in Isaiah.
And they're associated with human faith in that regard. And I think that the people in Austin, did you see what was put around the tree? Drive by to, what were some of the things? I was trying to remember.
Letters and love notes, all sorts of things.
And were one of those love notes yours, John?
Well, not a love note so much, but several years ago. If you're a forester and you're in Austin, the treaty oak is the tree. I mean, it's the most spectacular tree that we have in the area, in my opinion. And of course, it's a public tree, too, so anybody can go there and visit it anytime they want. And several years ago, I proposed to my wife under the treaty oak. To me, it symbolizes strength and permanence, all the things that trees, and particularly oaks, symbolize, and I thought that would be a good grounding for my wife and I's relationship. I hope this poisoning isn't a symbol or some sort of portent, but I don't think it is.
Well, one of the things, of course, this person who's coming to trial until proved guilty, I don't think necessarily make assumptions about that, but I think there is no doubt about the fact that we are pouring poison into our system. And I had wanted to just share with our viewers this image from Adam Daniel Finnerty's book called No More Plastic Jesus. And he compares our embattled planet to an ocean liner in danger of sinking not so much because of the hordes of hungry people massed in the holes below, but because of the behavior of the first-class passengers above. These passengers make up about 28% of the ship's list, have insisted on bringing their own automobiles, freezers, kitchen disposal units, and pets. A number of the ship's holds are filled with empty cans, bottles, discarded plastic, and broken appliances. All the residue of first-class consumption. And then saying how the privileged flush garbage down the plumbing, shoot aerosol sprays into the ventilating system, and insist on using the unlimited use of the ship's electricity and power. And this brings to mind what you were saying a while ago. In industrial societies, use a disproportionate amount of the resources, and the rest of the world suffers the consequences of that. And I think that from the standpoint of Spaceship Earth, as Buckminster Fuller called it, this is the mandate of not only the 90s, but the indefinite future. And the extent to which you have prepared for us, Lisa, some thoughts about 10 Commandments of Ecology. Could you share that with us?
All right, the 10 Commandments of the environment. The first is to remember that the earth is the Lord's. Over and over throughout Genesis 1, the creation story, God affirms that creation is good. We must remember, relearn this basic assumption that the fish, the animals, our skies, our land, our water, all of it is God's holy artwork, and it's good. The second commandment is that we must read and relate what we read to how we live. God's creation is in grave peril because we treat this holy artwork like trash. In offices, even in churches, on highways, down drains, in trash cans and dumpsters, we literally throw our earth away every day. These problems were on the cover stories of many magazines in '88 and '89. We need to read and study those issues, but no amount of study or reading does any good unless we relate it to how we live our life, what we do at the grocery store, what we buy, what we do to our lawn, how we get to work. So we need to read and relate it to how we live. The third commandment is to reduce. Ours is the most consumptive nation, just like the parable you just read about the ship. The most consumptive nation in the world, and we take wastefulness for granted. It's just part of the scenery. We need to buy groceries in bulk as much as possible. Co-ops, Wheatsville, makes that easier often. Take your own mug, your own glass with you so that you don't have to use disposables. Carry your own bag to the grocery store, put your purchases in it. Reduce energy consumption by walking, riding bikes, using carpools, using the bus. And in the winter, put on a sweater before you turn up the heat. The fourth commandment is to reuse. Too many consumer goods are designed for one-night stands. Often things come in plastic bags. Use those bags over and over again. Wrapping paper, mailing envelopes. Half of what's in the common trash can be used time after time. And you'll never have to buy another bag of plastic bags or a box of anything. Just reuse, reuse, reuse. The fifth commandment is to recycle. Recycle newspaper, office paper, glass, metal, aluminum. All those items can be easily recycled. When you're at the store, purchase items that come in recyclable containers. Make sure the containers get recycled. Austin has weekly curbside pickup, and that makes this commandment very easy to follow. Food scraps and leaves can be recycled in a compost pile right in your own backyard, and that reduces the need to buy fertilizer, relieves the stress on our landfills greatly. So, recycle. Sixth ties in with what John just said, relief. Trees are the lungs of our planet, and we need to relief, reforest our whole planet, especially our cities. The seventh commandment is to request. In a democracy, we elect officials to carry out our requests for life. We need to let our requests be known, loudly often. Call, write your city council members, your governor, senators, president. Request especially returnable bottle laws and stricter standards on polluters and stricter fines. The 10 states that have bottle deposit laws have seen increased recycling, reduced litter, savings, enormous savings on garbage disposal costs and energy use, and the creation of many new jobs. In a time of high unemployment, requesting bottle laws and other environmental concerns often is helpful in many ways. The eighth commandment is to refuse, to just say no to styrofoam, aerosols, phosphate detergents, toxic chemicals, and pesticides. Just refuse, just say no to the things that are unavoidably harmful to our planet. Refuse also to buy items that come in plastic when a recyclable container can be available or is used. and refuse to take part in the disposable mania that's influencing and infiltrating every corner of our life. The 9th commandment takes a different change of pace. Relax. Slow down. Take off your watch. Disconnect the phone. Life is too short to always be in a rush. The rat race pace of our culture is one big reason why we're in this environmental mess. Put on your sneakers and take a walk. Take a picnic, listen. Listen to nature. Listen for God in nature, in your neighbor. Listen to your own heart. Relax. It's a commandment. And the final commandment is rejoice. When we relax and slow down, we often find a lot more to rejoice about. The earth is full of the incredible, bounteous gifts of God. Don't insulate yourself from nature. Touch the rain, watch the river, put your hands in the dirt. Rejoice through it all. Life is a gift. All of it is a holy gift. Remember to rejoice.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, I think that gives a new meaning to the 10 Commandments in our time. How do you feel about that, John?
I think that's great. If we can follow the first 10 and the last 10 there, I think everything in between will take care of itself.
And let's focus, just for instance, on the first and the last, because I think, like in the original set, there's a special meaning to have the beginning and the end the way it is. Why did you choose that beginning and end the way you did, Lisa?
Well, I think a lot of our environmental catastrophe is a result of sin. It's really that we have put ourselves before our neighbors and our God, and convenience is just the altar on which most things are sacrificed today, and we're sacrificing our world. And I think if we remember to look to our faith for guidance instead of to the billboards and the advertising, if we let our faith set our decisions, it changes how we live. The real nitty-gritty decisions that we make morning to night.
So you start with the God relationship. I mean, that's the implication of the first. You end with the rejoice, which is also having to do with the relationship to God, to enjoy the Lord forever.
Yeah, I think a lot of our rat race and following the billboards and advertisings leads to a very unhappy life, and I don't think God meant it to be that way. I don't think that's what the rivers and flowers are there for.
Okay. It's interesting, in the original 10 Commandments, you started, you shall have no other gods before me, as is no question about the spiritual basis for the ethical behavior that's to be forthcoming. But then it ends about you're not coveting, where it's endless desire. I mean, you can never get enough. I remember John Rockefeller was once asked, how rich do you have to be, how much money do you have to have enough? And his answer was, just a little bit more. And the extent to which I think that's the whole psychology of the system of advertising, creating endless desire. I mean, this is something that you just have to be alert to if it's not going to control you.
It's an addiction, I think, like alcohol, drugs, all those other AA 12-step programs. We need a consumer addiction group that we're just addicted to finding more
Consumers
happiness.
Anonymous?
I think so. I mean, when you look at the pace that we're living at and how much stress in our lives, and the fact that we know better often, and yet we choose continually to go for things over inner peace and health and happiness.
Well, I think that the extent to which the Christmas season, ironically, which is purportedly the time when there is the peace and there is the tranquility, is also the time of the greatest frantic pace. And that the extent to which I think a change in the lifestyle is a means of getting a hold of that and of expressing this conviction. I think, John, one other thing in terms of the 10 Commandments, the one about reliefing, you mentioned this earlier, and you had shown me before the show something that you wanted to share with the viewers.
Well, just that if someone wants to make that commitment and they want to come in and bring their tree in and get a seedling, we'll also have at our different sites a tree planting guide for Austin. And if they're not at the sites, because some of the sites are county sites and we're not as well coordinated at those, they can call our department, which is 477 PARD for the Parks and Recreation Department, 477 PARD, and we can send them this tree planting guide for Austin, which tells why to plant, how to plant, where to plant, all that business. And then if it opens, once you've read that, you can even give it to your kids, and they can put it on the wall to remind them that that the trees certainly are beautiful, and they have little pictures of the leaves and things like that. So if anybody wants one of these, January is the perfect time to plant trees in Austin. It's a good way to start that commitment of healing with the planet, and we'll be happy to send it to them. It's a free publication from the Parks Department.
Well, I think that it also ties in with what's been become an international movement in terms of Arbor Day.
Mm-hmm.
And that sign of maturity is to plant a tree under which you will never enjoy its shade.
Mm-hmm. It's an old Chinese proverb, I think.
Right. We appreciate your sharing all of this insight today, John and Lisa. And we're glad to have each of you joining us with this as we find what's happening in Austin is going to be necessary for the care not only of our community, but the stewardship of the whole earth. Join us again next week for Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Richard Thompson, thanking you for watching, and peace be with you. For more information, call Austin Metropolitan Ministries at 472-7622.